In professional tennis, every single thunderous serve, every explosive forehand, it all comes at a cost. And I'm not just talking about points on a scoreboard. I'm talking about the incredible physical toll it takes on an athlete's body. So today, we're going to dive deep into the science behind the injuries that can literally make or break a career, from the junior circuits all the way to the Grand Slam finals.
Okay, so this is really where our story kicks off. 51%. That is the percentage of all injuries in professional tennis that strike the lower body. Yeah, you heard that right. More than half. The legs, the hips, the feet, they're the engine of any tennis player. But as we're about to see, they are also the most common point of failure. This one stat really sets the stage for everything we're about to cover.
All right, here's the game plan for today. We're going to start with the price of glory, then follow the journey of a developing athlete. After that, we'll get into the nitty-gritty with the anatomy of a pro injury, explore the amazing science of the comeback, and wrap it all up by looking at how we're engineering longer careers. Let's get into it.
So let's kick things off with Section 1, the price of glory. This is really about the fundamental deal every elite tennis player makes. To get to the very top, you have to push your body to its absolute breaking point limit. All that constant strain, thousands of hours on the court, the relentless pressure, it all adds up to a huge risk of injury. It's this high-stakes game where greatness and breakdown are really just two sides of the same coin. But this whole journey to the top, it doesn't start on center court under the bright lights. In Section 2, we're looking at the developing athlete. The foundation for a long, healthy career is laid way back in the junior years. But this is also the time where the first, often invisible, cracks can start to show up. So check out this timeline. It's fascinating, right? It shows exactly how a young player's body becomes vulnerable in different ways as they grow. From ages 10 to 14, you see all these growth-related pains in the knees and heels. Then, from 14 to 17, as the training gets way more intense, all that stress moves to the upper body. Shoulders and elbows are taking a beating. And finally, from 17 to 20, as these players start hitting with pro-level power, those massive rotational forces can lead to one of the most serious injuries in the game, stress fractures in the lower back. But it's not all just physical, right? There's this huge psychological piece of the puzzle called athletic identity. This is what happens when a young player's whole sense of who they are gets wrapped up in being an athlete. And when that happens, they start to just ignore their body's warning signs. Pain stops being a signal to rest and instead becomes just another wall to smash through. And if you need proof, just look at this. In a study of competitive adolescent players, a staggering 70%, 70, of those with shoulder overuse symptoms just kept on playing, right through the pain. That's just wild when you think about it. The pressure to win, to not lose your ranking, it becomes more powerful than the body's own instinct to protect itself. Okay, so now let's jump up to the big leagues. Section 3, anatomy of a pro injury, the grind. Because at this level, everything we've just talked about gets cranked up to 11. We're talking a brutal, year-round global tour, insane schedules, and a game that just keeps getting faster and more powerful. Now, to really get what's happening at the pro level, you've got to understand this one core idea, the kinetic chain. The easiest way to think about it is like a whip. The power doesn't come from the tip of the whip, right? It starts in the handle. For a tennis player, the power starts from the ground, shoots up through the legs, the hips, the core, and is finally unleashed through the shoulder, arm, and out through the racket. It's an incredible sequence of energy transfer. And the serve, it's the absolute classic example of this. If a player's legs are tired or their core isn't firing properly, that beautiful energy transfer gets disrupted. The chain breaks. And when that happens, what do you think has to pick up the slack? The shoulder and the elbow. They're forced to do way more work than they were ever designed for. And that, right there, is the root cause of so many upper body injuries. And this data right here, it just paints such a clear picture. There's that 51% again for the lower body, the engine room. Then you've got the upper body at 34%, often because that kinetic chain broke down somewhere else. And the core, that critical link connecting everything, accounts for the other 15%. It's like this chart is a map of the battlefield that is a pro player's body.
Let's zoom in on one of the nastiest injuries out there, the stress fracture. Now, these aren't your typical breaks from one bad fall. Nope, this is damage that builds up over time from repetitive stress. And for tennis players, with all that powerful twisting and arching on serves and ground strokes, the lumbar spine, the lower back, is a really common victim. And get this, the very ground they play on completely changes the game for their bodies. On one hand, you have hard courts. They're totally unforgiving. The impact forces are huge, sending shockwaves right up through the joints. On the other hand, you've got clay. It's softer, it lets players slide into shots, which reduces that jarring impact. But it puts a whole different kind of strain on the muscles, which have to work way harder to slow down and change direction.
So does the data back this up? Absolutely. The constant relentless pounding on hard courts leads to more of those stress-related injuries, like stress fractures and issues in the feet and lower back. But on clay, with all the sliding and sudden stops, you see more muscle injuries, especially in the thigh and ankle. The takeaway here is huge. The court can literally change what kind of injury you're most likely to get.
Okay, so we've spent a lot of time on the problem. Now let's talk about the solution. Welcome to Section 4, the science of the comeback. This is where modern sports science has completely changed the game, turning what used to be career-ending injuries into, well, manageable setbacks.
You know, back in the day, the approach to rehab was pretty, simple. Your shoulder hurts? Stop using your shoulder. Rest it. But now, it's a whole different ballgame. Today, it's all about active recovery. The thinking is that the pain in your shoulder might actually be coming from a weakness in your hip. It's about looking at the entire kinetic chain to find the real root cause, not just slapping a Band-Aid on the symptom.
So what does this new approach actually look like? Well, it's a super logical step-by-step process. First, you gotta manage the pain and swelling. Step 2, get that full range of motion back. Step 3 is all about targeted strengthening of the muscles around the injury. But here's the game changer. Step 4. That's when you reintegrate the entire kinetic chain, strengthening the core, the hips, the legs, to make sure the whole system is working together again. Only then can you even think about a gradual return to the court.
And it all comes back to this one idea, right? A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Modern rehab isn't just about fixing the part that broke. It's about detective work. It's about finding that one weak link. Maybe it's a tight hip, a weak core muscle, and fixing that to build a stronger, more bulletproof athlete.
All right, for our final section, let's look ahead. Section 5, engineering longer careers. We're actually moving past just fixing injuries. We're now in an era of actively trying to make careers last longer, using a mix of smarter science and really forward-thinking rules. And a perfect example of this in action is a game-changing rule the WTA brought in way back in 1995. It was called the Age Eligibility Rule, and it was designed specifically to protect young superstars from that classic too much, too soon problem. It basically limited how many tournaments young players could enter, preventing them from burning out, both physically and mentally.
And the results? I mean, they speak for themselves. The numbers are just staggering. Before this rule, the average career was about 9 years. After, it jumped to over 11. But here's the crazy part. The percentage of players whose careers lasted more than 15 years more than doubled, from 3.5% to 8.8%. It's crystal clear proof that smarter policies create longer, healthier careers.
So that's the pros. But what about the rest of us, right? The weekend warriors? Well, while the pros are navigating all these high-stakes risks, the long-term health benefits for the rest of us are just huge. Study after study shows that playing tennis regularly is linked to living longer, having a healthier heart, stronger bones, and even better mental well-being. The price of glory is high, for sure, but the reward of just playing the game, that pays off for a lifetime.
And all of this, it brings us to one really exciting final question. We've seen how science is getting better and better at beating injury, and how smarter rules are protecting players. We're already seeing legends of the game compete at the highest level well into their late 30s. So as all these trends continue, you have to wonder, are we standing on the edge of a brand new era where a 40-year-old Grand Slam champion isn't a miracle, but maybe the new normal?